In an era of the 20-second soundbite or quickly getting your news from TikTok, the conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has turned that all up on its head and released a 18-minute video dealing with one of the most significant public policy issues facing Canada and arguably North America, and that's our housing crisis. Hello, I'm Adrienne. With me is Warren Kinsella. So in previous incarnations of both of our lives, you and I were political staffers that were in the communications field, helping our respective politicians, prepare and write speeches and really push their message in a communications form in the very traditional way. And I say about the quick sound bites now, Warren, because that seems to be the generation in which we're in. But Poilievre really turned that on its head. He's having a conversation with Canadians that he wants to have, not the one Trudeau is trying to make them have. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on this 18-minute video that's been now viewed by millions of people.
Yeah, and you're bang on. I confess, I've done attack ads for political parties over the years. And generally the rule of thumb, as you suggested, you can't go more than 90 seconds. You can't have, a lot of complex information in it. And it's got to be super hot. It's got to be tough. It's got to be angry. It's got to be really pushy in order for people to watch it. Well, Poilievre didn't do any of those three things. He did a video that was really long. He did a video that was actually kind of complex about the housing crisis, and his tone was measured and informative, and people loved it. And I think there's a lesson there for all the political parties. Poilievre kind of schooled everybody and said, look, I'm going to have a serious discussion about a serious issue, and I'm going to gamble that people want that and want to see it. And they did. Like, it just did gangbusters. And now, as one columnist put it, and this columnist is no fan of Pierre Poilievre owns the housing issue in Canada now. Now, the reason why his numbers were so great on it is because it was really well done. The production values were excellent. It hung together. But I think also it talked about a number one issue for Canadians, which is the housing crisis. The Trudeau guys are not talking about it. They're talking about woke stuff. They're talking about the climate crisis all the time. They've left that part of the waterfront to Pierre, and he's seized it and he's benefiting from it.
And I think it's in part, Warren, why we're seeing so much, the Tories right now, at least outside of the election, are enjoying a considerable amount of public support. We talk about it regularly. If an election were held today, I think Pierre Poilievre is looking at potentially a super majority in terms of what he would get in seat counts. The latest projections are incredible. But I think that there is the discussion that's happening in the homes of Canada, if you have a home, is how are we going to let a generation get into the housing market? And I think what was interesting about that video is it was overtly political, to be sure, but he showed the sort of the moving head of Justin Trudeau, but just indicating where things have gone since he's been in office. I thought that was a very good way of demonstrating it. But you see the younger folks moving their vote over and saying, hey, I'm going to give the Conservatives a shot here. I'm looking at them. The very same people who likely voted for Trudeau back in 2015, they've abandoned him. It's a different perspective.
Yeah, well, the Liberal Party has owned the young vote, the youth vote, who don't always come out, but the Liberal Party has owned that vote for a generation. So a seismic shift has taken place. And women generally tend to hew to the progressive side of the spectrum, but young people just don't vote conservative. They don't. And that's what's happening. And Poilievre, I think, because, as you know, I've been quite critical of him in the past, I think he's kind of cooled it. He's changed the tone, he's changed his look, and he's talking about issues that people care about. Like, the one slide that really stayed in my mind is when he talked about, and hopefully we can show this.
Yeah.
I did not know it takes your average Canadian 25 years to save up for a down payment on a home. And like, you're in your beautiful home right now, I'm in my home right now. And like, young people in this country who are working hard and they're going to school like their parents tell them to, they just can't make it 25 years before they can own their own home, which is something that you and I and our generation accepted was, part of a right of citizenship. So Poilievre has tapped into that, and he's speaking to those kids, and they are responding in a way that has never happened before in Canadian politics.
One of the things that we've always said, Warren, is, don't discount Justin. He's a very good campaigner. He's very, he's still charismatic. People still like to get their pictures and their selfies and whatnot with him. But it seems that doesn't, wherever Pierre Poilievre is going, same thing is happening. He's getting mobbed. He's getting all the pictures and all the photos. But I just want to sort of shift the conversation from that a little bit to just the bigger issue with what Justin Trudeau, like the Liberals have built their party around Trudeau. And back in the day when you were part of that party and working for Jean Chrétien, it was a different perspective, and it was a far more fiscally responsible Liberal government at the time. And the other fiscally responsible government that came after was, of course, Stephen Harper, Prime Minister Stephen Harper. These two prime ministers recently came together and met in a social setting, and they were there to support Israel. But you kind of harken back to those days, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And, there's a lesson here. And so, I think we should show, the Harpers, both Mr. Harper and Mrs. Harper, put up photos talking about their friendship and their great respect for Jean Chrétien. My guy, Chrétien, he's not so good with Twitter, so he hasn't done likewise. But I had dinner with him on Sunday night with my partner, and he was telling us about how much he really admires and likes the Harpers, and how much he enjoyed himself. Lawrence Martin had in the competition this week a column about this, about the respect between the two men, and because they were capable of tough decisions, because they had moral clarity, but they were also fiscally tough. They knew in order for us to have the social programs we love, we can't go bankrupt. And the one thing he pointed out that was very interesting is he said Justin Trudeau has not consulted with the great wisdom that is Jean Chrétien. And I know for a fact that Poilievre consults with Stephen Harper. Yes. There's a lot of experience. When you become prime minister, you're not a dummy. And there's a lot of experience there you can tap into. Poilievre taps into Harper's experience. Trudeau has not with Chrétien, and the proof is in the pudding. He is now, right now, if an election were to take place, Pierre Poilievre would get 3 times as many seats, the pollsters tell us, as Justin Trudeau. 3 times as many. It's a massacre like we haven't seen since 93 or 84.
Yeah. Well, and what I think is so fascinating about this long form video that they put out on the housing market is, yes, great production, very well researched. You could probably quibble with some of the details in there, but that said, the overarching message is really resonating with Canadians of all political stripes, of all ages, of all generations. But Trudeau has really not been able to fulfill any of those commitments to Canadians. We'll probably see a scramble towards the next election, some promises made about housing. You saw something recently about taking the tax off of some of those new builds and things like that. But it just seems a little bit too little, too late, Warren. So last word on this: does another long policy conversation, that type of issue that's facing our country, do the NDP and Liberals try to emulate that? Do they try to mimic it, or does Poilievre now just have that market cornered?
I think he owns the housing issue now, because he's talking about it in a serious way. And obviously millions of people have responded to that. Like, as you know, full disclosure, I campaigned for Joe Biden in the last election. When I was going door to door for him in the United States, we had people who were saying to me, I don't want to hear about how you dislike Donald Trump. We know you disliked him. What are you going to do? Tell me what you're going to do. And that was the genius of the Poilievre video, is it wasn't, a long attack on Justin Trudeau. It was, here's the problem, and here's my idea for fixing it. That's what it's all about. That's what politics is all about, is saying, here we got a problem, and here's how I think we can address it. And it worked. People responded to that. We need more of that in our politics,
Yeah.
particularly at this time. And, hats off to Pierre Poilievre for doing what, Canadians want him to do.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to thetorontosun.com and you can read commentary on stories like this and others you will not find anywhere else.